Not all cyber risk is related to threats. Just think about that for a minute here. Sometimes I get the impression that the whole discussion on cyber risk or risk per se in the OT space is deliberately pushed into this threat-centric view of the world, where it's all about the attackers, their intentions, their capabilities, etc. And that is not really a realistic view of cyber risk. So if you thought so far this is what cyber risk is all about, let me tell you, you have missed some very important areas. And what are those areas? First of all, a big area of concern presently for asset owners is the problem of product obsolescence. If you look at the average manufacturing facility, you will find OT equipment in there, specifically if you think about those legacy field buses like DeviceNet and ControlNet, for example, that's in there for maybe 20 years or longer. And let's just hope this equipment still is operating properly, but obviously at some point in time it will no longer do. And then the asset owner might find themselves in a very tight spot because guess what? They can no longer purchase spares. The product is no longer available. And this is what product obsolescence management is all about. Certainly you can and should know in advance if your product is still available from the vendor. Unless you are simply happy with the idea, oh, I might also always be able to buy used parts on eBay. And I mean, if you are laughing at this, this is actually what companies do these days, because they missed that window of time when they could actually continue to buy spares, but that window is closed. So your last resort is eBay, and that is certainly not what you want to favor. So obsolescence management is about understanding where you have products that are at the end of their product life cycle or even past that end. And you want to make sure that you furnish a replacement strategy for these products, especially when it happens that those OT devices are powering very important parts of your production, like critical systems, critical machine lines, where the company would experience a substantial monetary loss if those machine lines are no longer available, because that, let's just say that RTU or that actuator from 25 years ago, it just broke and you don't have any spares. Okay, so that is another area of cyber risk that is unfortunately underrepresented in the discussion of cyber risk management, OT risk management. And you get the point. So it is totally unrelated to attacks, to security, but it's still a real risk. It still will result in monetary loss. And the interesting thing is it's a risk that can be mitigated pretty easily. It's also a risk that doesn't require an attacker, a threat actor, to actually do his or her thing, right? So this is something that we never know. When might the hackers want to strike and what will they do to us? We don't need to speculate about intentions. We just need to know, well, can I still buy that old piece of shit? Right? And sometimes the answer is no, and then you know you're in trouble. That is your real cyber risk that you need to mitigate. Another area of risk that I want to point you to is automation vendor product notices or safety notifications. So I would assume for the asset owners in the audience, they know that pretty well. Every now and then, the automation vendors release notifications. There are many times not available for public consumption, but you can subscribe to the mailing list, etc. if you are a customer of these products. And they will tell you, they will inform you, well, sorry customer, but we have just identified that there is a specific problem with this particular firmware version or this particular software version, and it affects this configuration. And if you have this configuration, you may/will experience, I don't know, let's just say an outage. And in order to prevent this outage, you should update the firmware, the software version, whatever, to that latest version that we point you to in our notification. Okay? Such a notification could also be safety related, where the vendor has identified an issue with the product in a particular configuration that can be safety relevant. And obviously you must act on this. Right? And again, it does not require a hacker to make that risk real. It's just there. You have to act on this. Because even in the absence of a hacker, even in the absence of an attack, this will hurt you if you don't. And what do you need to do to address this? Well, I can tell you one thing: pure manual labor and a couple of guys sifting through those notifications that you might get via email, or through those web pages where you learn about product obsolescence, that won't do it. Because even if you would do a perfect job of catching all those notifications or monitoring all the information about product obsolescence, you're still left with one significant problem. How do you identify if and where you have the affected configurations? And this is where an OT asset management system comes in. So if you're using OT base, this can be processed in a matter of minutes. If OT base won't tell you right away, this product just went out of life, end of life, excuse me. So you will see that right away. And the same thing for those vendor product notifications. You will be able to turn those into search queries where OT base tells you right away, okay, you are affected, you have this particular configuration with that known problem in the, let's just say, in the Wilmington plant, in building 5. You have 3 of these configurations that are affected, and another one in Italy. Right? So this is what you get from an OT asset management system. And this allows you to proactively mitigate the problem and then also reduce your cyber risk. Same thing with product obsolescence. You will see exactly the products that are end of life, that are past end of life. And based on that, and usually the list is pretty long, you can furnish your replacement strategy before disaster strikes. And the funny thing is, and the irony, this is usually an activity where you have the full support of management. Because management understands, okay, this is not some bullshit that interested parties have made up and hyped up, right? You know, the hackers from Russia and Iran, etc. No, that's probably all, or most of that is probably all just hype. But if the automation vendor tells you, well, you know, guys, sorry, but you can no longer buy the product, or if they tell you there is an issue with that product, let's just say with these variable frequency drives, with that configuration that you have, then you will find it easier to get management support for an actual risk mitigation. And all of that can be accomplished by using a solid OT asset management system. You can ease that. You can just browse through that process within a couple of hours' time. You have all the data you need, and then you can start mitigating.